Okay, so good morning all. Let us start today's lecture. We share the screen and we'll start off with a quick revision of what we discussed in the previous class. Okay, so in the previous class we started off with a module which deals with organizing files, right? So we have been organizing the files in normal way, but we have seen in the previous lecture that how can we organize files using some Python commands, right? For example, making copies of all the one type of a file like PDF file inside a folder, then renaming few files by automating the task and not repeating the same thing. Then we also saw some example which deals with zipping a particular file, right? Compressing a file and zipping a file. So we started off with learning about the module called SHUTIL, which is Shell Utility Module, which helps us to do to perform this task, that is copying, moving, or renaming or deleting the files, right, using the Python program. So we saw a few examples with respect to that, that is copying files and folders. We saw the syntax for it. Then we saw an example of moving and renaming, right, by giving the path name, the file, and the source and the destination. Then we also saw three different techniques to delete a file, right? That is using os.unlink, which is used to unlink a particular path or disconnect. Then we also saw os.rmdir, which is remove directory, followed by the argument, that is the path itself, so which will remove that particular folder. And also we saw the shuttle.rm tree, right, which will remove the tree itself, right? The shell utility command which uses the path, and that particular path will be removed from the tree, right? So these are the three different ways to delete a particular file or folder. Then we saw an example of how can we delete or safe delete the files, right? By sending them into a trash. So for that we made use of a module called send to trash module, and then we implemented a safe delete operation. We had a simple walkthrough in a directory tree, right? We saw an example of how a directory or a root folder can have subfolder inside it, and then again have some other files or folders, documents, right? Different types of documents with different extensions, and then how can we walk through those directory, right? That particular directory tree. So for that, we have a function called os.walk, right, which will give us the complete walkthrough of the directory, right? For example, the current folder is so and so, and the subfolders are so and so, and the file inside the folders and so and so. So a brief walk over the directory tree is what you can see here. And then ultimately we saw compressing files with the zip file module, right? So which is handy again. For that you have to import the zip file module and perform the operation of first reading the zip file, right? We saw an example of how can we read a particular file, how can we compress it, right? The original file size and the compressed file size, as you can see here. Then we saw an example of how can we extract the files from a zip file, right, using the extract all method, right? We saw example for that also. And then creating and adding a zip file, that is nothing but a new zip file. How can we create a zip file, right? So there are a few projects associated with these modules that we have learned, which you can go through it, and of course also we will discuss it by the end of the module, this module 3. We will have this session on the different projects that we are going to learn, right? So in today's lecture we are going to start off with another new topic, that is debugging, right? So you must have already gone through. Now you have a basic idea about how do we go about the program. Yeah, how to write now next little advanced level programs or more complicated programs here in the Python, right? So with this understanding, we should be also in a position to detect any problem or error or a bug inside the problem in a program, right? So for that we have different techniques, and that's what we are going to learn in this particular chapter. So this is also very important chapter, because this will help you to understand where your program is going wrong, or where do we have error or a bug, right? So debugging is very important aspect of programming. So there is a you know a phrase or an old joke by programmers, that is, writing code accounts for 90% of programming, and debugging code accounts for other 90%. So this is just a joke or a phrase by the programmer that is used. So you can see that how important the debugging here is, right? So even if you have completed your 90% of your programming, but if you have not debugged it, if you have not detected the bug, if it is there, then your program is still worthless, right? So you have to do the remaining 90% of debugging as well. So this is just a phrase, but nevertheless, debugging is anyways important for any programmer at any point, because without debugging, you will not be in a position to detect whether your program which you have written is correct or no, right? So there are different ways to do it, to detect the error, to you know resolve those errors, and come up with the right program. So for that, we are going to learn few aspects. For example, raising the exceptions. Then we are going to learn about the assertions. We are going to learn about the logging, because these things will help us to understand step by step of a program, and then we can easily detect where the program is going wrong, right? So let us start with the first one, that is raising exceptions. Now, if you can recall, in I think first module, when we discussed about different types of statements, we discussed statement called try or exception statements, right? Try and exception statements. I think when we were discussing about the if statements, if else clauses, we discussed about the try and except uh, statements as well, right? Hope you can recall that. So those try and accept statements were meant to check, right? Or they were just meant to check for the programmer that the code the programmer is writing is performing as expected or no, right? So that was the intention of having these statements, try and accept, right? And I remember we took an example of divide by zero exception, right? We were trying to divide a number by zero, so which is actually error, right? According to mathematics, it is not defined. Divided by zero means infinity. So basically, divide by zero is an exception, right? So if when we face any such problem that a number is getting divided by zero, then it becomes important for the programmer to uh, prompt a message to the user that this is an invalid input, or this operation cannot be performed, right? So that was an exception. So if you can recall, we put that exception into this except statement, right? And the remaining possible operations which were can be operated, which can be processed, we had put it into the try statement just for the trial. So the point here is the try and accept statement help us before we make our program crash. It helps us to detect whether the statement or the instruction that we have given to the program is going to perform successfully, or it is going to throw an error. So that is the motive of having that uh, exception, try and accept statement, right? So the another way to do it is, I mean, these exceptions can be exception statements can be incorporated here when we raise an exception, right? For in order to make use of these exception statements, we have to raise we have to raise an exception. We have to let a program know that I'm going to raise an exception. So whatever the instruction that I'm going to give, please consider it as the part of the exception, right? And not the actual program. Because if you don't raise an exception, and if that particular line of code is executed, it is very likely that your program may get crashed, right? Or you might get an error. So it's better to put, if you think that there is something not so clear about the code, or you're doubtful about the code, it is better to put it into the exception statement. So the program will directly come to know that this particular code is just an exception, and if it is not successfully executing, it will just give you an error that so and so is not working, right? So we will see how it is. So the basic motive here is basic motive of raising this exception is to stop running the code in this function and move the program execution to the except state. Right. So whenever a program encounters uh, the raise keyword, right? Raise will be the keyword that will be used in order to make the program aware that whatever is getting to be followed is an exception, right? So the moment the Python program encounters the raise it is raising an exception is a way of saying it's in other way we are mentioning or we are saying to the program that stop running the code in this particular function and move the program execution to the except statement, right? So the program will come to know that this following line of code is just the exception. So what if anything goes wrong, it will not be harmful for the program and it will simply throw an error message which you have set to be prompted, right? So you may have to give a suitable error message, a helpful error message, which can help you understand for you as a programmer to detect the error and resolve the error. Right. So it is basically from the programmer side, programmer's point of view, and not the user point of view. Right. So how do we go about it? Let us go a little more into depth and see how do we go about it. So in order to make use of this raise statement, what we have is we need to make use of the keyword raise followed by a call to the function called exception, right? Which will come to know that the following statements are the exceptions, right? And in the exception function, you have to give a helpful error message, which will be passed as an argument to the exception function, which will help you to understand that what that error might be or what operation that particular statement is doing and how to resolve it, right? In case if there is an error. So designing or defining that error message, it depends on you. How do you define it? So just to give you a very simple example, one simple single line example that this is how a syntax would look like for the exception, raising an exception. That is first being the keyword raise, followed by the exception function, and followed by the prompt message. Right, whatever the message can be anything that you want to convey. Right, so here this placeholder it can be any error message, right? This is the error. So here the author has just mentioned this is the error message. So whatever the error you think it has can be written here. And this is what something error would look like, this which is not actually an error, but it is the prompt from the traceback. We will also see what is this traceback, but for timing, please understand that uh, the program Python is trying to give you an error, but this error is nothing but the error which we have designed. Right? We have mentioned that exception is this is the error. So this is what we have designed it. But in case whatever a particular error, let's say you have a case in which you have a genuine error here, so that error will be reflected here. Right? So again, the motive here is to save the program from crashing and testing, or you can say debugging. It is actually debugging, right? It is debugging the code whether the program is going to execute or not. Right. So in order to make you understand about it more, let us go ahead and start off with the Python ideally and have an example. Okay, so I have written the code here that is to print a box, right? Just to print a box at the terminal, right? So what we are going to do here is, let me show you the output so that we can relate it to directly. This is the code here, and this will be something like output, right? So output is something like we are trying to design a box, right? We are trying to print a box using some characters. How to go about it, we will see here, right? So box print is the function which takes three parameters, which is first the symbol, which will be used to represent a box or design a box. you can say it can be a border of the box, and followed by the two other parameters, that is the width as well as the height, right? So first things first, that we have to check whether the length of the symbol is not equal to 1, right? If it is not equal to 1, then we raise the exception, right? If the length of that particular symbol is not equal to 1, it has to be equal to 1, right? So if it is not equal to 1, we are going to raise an exception, right? As I've given you the syntax just now, that raise keyword followed by the exception function, right? And followed by the error that you want to put, right? Or the message that you want to convey to the programmer. So once we say that if the length is not equal to 1, we are just going to give an exception saying the error that symbol must be a single character string, right? Or you cannot have two characters, for example, two asterisks as the box. Definitely you can have it, but there's no point in that. So we are going to just consider one symbol as one character for the box outline. Right. So that's why we are checking the length as 1. So if the length is not equal to 1, we are going to give this error, or else we are going to continue with the program. Now, in continuation, as you can see, we check the second parameter, that is the width of the uh, box that we are going to print. So if the width is less than 2, right, if the width is less than 2, we are going to just simply put a error to the we are going to prompt an error or a message to the user that the width must be greater than 2, right? The reason is because you cannot draw a box with just two symbols, right? If the width is 2, you cannot simply draw a box. It cannot be a box, right? So, or it cannot be a square, right? A square is nothing but the border with, you can say, blank or a space in between, right? In the center. So you cannot have that space in between if you have width which is less than 2, right? Less than or even equal to 2. So we need to have a value which is greater than 2, minimum greater than 2, that is minimum 3. And similarly with the height, because the width and the height are nothing but the same side, right? We are trying to put a square box. So the same exception goes here. Now let us go ahead and start printing the symbol, right? So in order to print it, we are going to make use of the print command, the print function, followed by this, the product of the symbol as well as the width, right? We are going to check the length of the symbol as well as the width. So, and here in this line of code, as you can see, we are going to set up a loop, right? Till we reaches the height, right? And we are going to continuously print that particular symbol in order to form a square, right? So as you can see here, we have used some variables just for the symbol, width, and height, and we are going to simply put a symbol in order to perform that or construct that square here. Right. Now the point here is important point here is we are going to put this whole thing, that is the whole function, inside the try clause or the try statement. Right. So why try? Because we are just prompting the Python program here, that the Python ideally here, that this whole program is just a trial program, and in case if anything goes wrong, you will be getting an error, but the program will not crash, right? So it is kind of a safer way to execute a particular program when you don't know whether there are any errors or bugs inside the program, right? So that's why we have put the whole function, the box print, inside the try statement. And what will be the exception for that? The exception is, as you can see, except exception as error, that is print an exception happened, right? That is an exception happened. Now, this will give us what is that exception which has happened, right? So let me execute it and see what would the output would look like. So I'm just going to go ahead and press F5, which will execute it, right? Or else you can go to just run command and press run module. So you will get something like this. Yeah. So as you can see, we have used the symbol asterisk as well as the O to form a box, right? So this is a standing rectangle box, you can say, or this is the sitting rectangular box. And what is the exception here is, the exception is width must be greater than 2, right? And another is symbol must be a single character string, right? So these were the two exceptions that we have handled, right? Or we have seen, which were required according to this program, right? So I hope this is easier to understand. Anybody, any doubts so far? If you have any doubt with respect to this program, we can take the doubts.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, why are we using -2 there? Just that is height -2 and width -2 in for loop.
Yes. Good question. Just a moment. Okay, so as we have seen that the length of the length of the two parameters here, width as well as the height, right? So we cannot form a square with the value of this width and height being 2, right? Because you cannot form. If I had a board, I would have explained it better. But assume that you have two dots or any two figures which you can place it on a board, right? So it might form kind of a square, but it cannot be a box, right? So in order to make it a box, at least we need to have three symbols, whatever that symbol is. In this case, we are taking asterisk as well as we are taking the character O, right, which is to draw the border of the square. So minimum that we need to have is 3, only then we will get it. So in order to reach that limit, we are checking whether we have reached that width -2. So it is like the terminating condition till we get it, right? Hope you got it. Am I clear? Okay. So you can try out similar programs with similar modifying or tuning a little bit more into this and try experiment out few different things, right? Instead of a box, let's say you design a rhombus or a triangle, right? So in that case, there will be few things which will most of the things will remain same. A few things that you have to change, and you can perform those things also. Right. So now talking about the trace back, right? The trace back, what you have seen here, and you must have observed it many times, which we whenever we get an error, right? So what is this trace back is what we are going to learn here in the next topic. That is getting the trace back as a string. Now, first of all, what is this traceback, right? Traceback is nothing but it is just a set of instructions or information, not instructions, but information given by the Python. Now, when the Python or the language, the programming language gives you this traceback, when it has encountered an error, right, and it want to convey it, it want to produce a treasure trove. Treasure trove of what? Treasure trove of errors, right? So treasure trove is nothing but the you can say any valuable information that the Python language has, or any particular language for that matter, has, and it wants to convey it when it has encountered an error. So they are the defined instructions already stored, which will be only put at the output when you encounter an error. So, for example, we don't print these things, right? Whenever we encounter an error, we don't print these things that trace back recent call last file so and so, line number so and so, module so and so. So we don't print this, right? We automatically get it from the programming language, right? So how do we get that? So it is actually the treasure trove which the Python program, here in this case the Python program, already has stored, but has only put in the output when the Python program encounters an error. So that is just to convey to the programmer that there is an error. So what are these traceback? If you can see these tracebacks, they usually have the line number, they have the error type, or maybe what was the latest called function or a module, whatever, right? The file, the line number, and those parameters. So these are the important information the traceback gives in order to detect where can be the error or a bug. Right, right. So this is what the information the traceback covers, which is nothing but the sequence of different information, the error messages, line number, the function that has been called, that is the sequence of the functions calls, right? For example, if you remember when we discussed local variables and global variables, we had bacon, we have spam, right? So we have two, three functions called in other in irregular fashion. So it becomes very important to understand the flow or the sequence of those function calls. So that will be stored in the traceback, right? That track of the sequence of these functions will be there available in the traceback, which is also called the call stack. So call stack is nothing but it is the sequence of calls that we have made when we have executed the program. So to understand that, let us go ahead and discuss a simple example which will contain an error, right? A simple example, let's name it error example, which will have an error. So the only motive here is to understand the sequence of this function calls and how is this error? How can we say that it's an error, right? So let us go ahead and define a function called spam, and inside spam we are going to call bacon, and then we are of course going to define a bacon also. And inside bacon function, we are going to put an error, right? We are going to insert or raise an exception, which is an error, right? So raise exception, which is the safest way to detect an error. So raise exception, this is an error. So assume that this is an error. And then we are going to call the spam, right? The spam function. So whenever we call a spam function, the spam function will be executed, and the control of the shift goes here. And the second instruction, which is the bacon function, is called, and then the bacon is executed, and then this line is executed. And here is when we get an error, right? So let us go and understand how do we get that error, right? So of course there is an error here in this line. So the Python is going to give us the treasure trove. From the treasure trove, the sequence of instructions or the information related to the error, right? So the traceback most recent call followed by the file, which is the error example.py. Line number 7 is the error with the function name spam, right? And file error name again line number 2 in spam with bacon, and also file error name error example line number 5 in bacon. So as you can see, there is only just one error in the program, but you can see three errors here, right? Three errors being pointed by the Python here. That is line number 2, line number 5, and line number 7. The reason is because the sequence in which it is called, right? And ultimately we are going to get what exactly is the error here, right? So in order to get this rectified, or in order to debug it, we can make use of another function called traceback.format. Right now here, as I've already mentioned, there was just one error, that is this error. Assume that this line has an error, but the reason why we got two errors here is because it were interlinked, because the spam was calling, we called the spam function here, it was called here, the control shift, the shift of the control has been to here in the bacon, then the bacon is again, which is line number 2 here, and the line number 2 called the bacon function, and then actually we got an error which is at line number 5. So though the error was on line 5, the flow of the control or the sequence of the calls were like line number 7 first got executed, then line number 2 got executed, and then line number 5 got executed. So that's why we got line number 7, 2, and 5 here. Right. So as I mentioned, the traceback.format except command exception, it can be made use of using the module which is traceback. So if you're planning to use traceback.format, then you have to import the traceback module, and again the other things remain same. That is try clause and the exception clause, wherein you are going to open the file, append the write mode, then define the write method, right? We are going to define the write method here, error file dot write followed by the traceback dot format exception. And as we have seen, we are supposed to close the file, and then ultimately we can print a message that print the traceback info was returned to the error info. Now what has happened is we have just created a file, right? We have opened a error info.txt file, and whatever is returned by the traceback, right, which is nothing but the error message what we see in our window, that error has been written into a new text document named error info.txt, right? And that error is saved in that document, right? So this is helpful when you want to document all the errors that you have encountered, right? So what this particular line does it, the write method will return a value, right? It will return a value after execution of the statement, that is trace backward format. So 116, what you see here, it is actually the length, right? It is the returned value from the write method. So since there were 116 characters were returned into that error file, error info.txt, the value which is returned is 116. Right. So one more aspect that, as I mentioned in the beginning of the lecture, apart from raising an exception, we can also make use of assertions. Right. Now, what are these assertions? Assertions are nothing but they are the kind of a check. They are the sanity check to make sure that whether your code is doing something which is very commonly wrong, right? Very obviously wrong. So very simple thing, but you have defined it in a wrong way, or it might look that it is right, but it is actually wrong, right? So it can be a simple error, a simple bug, which when you go through the program, you might not detect it, you might not be able to debug it. So that's where the assertions come. So when you make use of these assertions, these sanity checks are performed on the statements of the set of code that you have given, followed by the assertion statement, right? So the keyword here is the assert. You have to make use of the assert, right? And if there is a fail in the sanity check, that is there is no assertion, then an assertion error exception is raised, right? Only then assertion error exception is raised. We will have an example to understand this better. And the important aspect to be remembered here is the keyword assert, the condition, which is the expression, whether it evaluates to a true value or a false value, followed by a comma, and the string that you want to display when the condition is false. So this is for the user. Now let us take an example to understand it better, right? So let us say we have this example, and here in this case, as you can see, we are going to you can make use of any variable. I've just made use of the variable called pod bay door status, right? So it is just the status of the door, whether the door is open or closed. So let's say we have a variable called pod bay doors status open. So we are defining it, right? We are assigning the value open to the status of the door, and then we are giving an assertion, right? We are giving an assertion that uh, pod bay door status is equal to open, and then followed by comma, right? As you can see here, comma, and then the string that we want to display if the condition is false. So if the condition is false, that means if the door is not open, that means it's closed. Then we have to prompt a message that the pod bay doors need to be open, right? So this is a simple. So far, no problem, right? Everything is correct. Let us go ahead and define another statement to it. That is, pod bay doors status is, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Right. So this is a statement. And note that here, since I'm using apostrophe M, uh, I'm making use of the escape character here, that is backslash, right? So I have this statement ready. Now, so far so good. But in the fourth line, as you can see, I'm again, second time, I'm giving again assertion that pod bay door status is again open, right? I'm assigning it again open and giving a message that the pod bay doors need to be open. So this is a repetition, right? This is a status which was already asserted. This assertion was already existing. So the second time, the second one was not important. So it is a kind of a bug. It is a kind of error which is kind of creating a redundancy in the program. So uh, as you can see here in the second part, that is we when we say that the this was the obvious mistake that we have done, right? The second statement is the obvious mistake. So it is obvious that it shouldn't be defined there. So when we have any obvious statement which can be uh, potential error or a bug, we can make use of the assertions, right? And they will help us to detect whether it's an error or no. So it will have a check whether there is something wrong or no. So basically what assertion means is that this condition holds true, and if not, there is a bug, right? For example, here, this condition, it is true, but if it is not true, then there is an error. So this is second time that we are giving this same command, which is the obvious error, right? Obvious bug. So which is obviously wrong. So that's why the error, that's why the assertion, uh, comes into picture and helps us to understand that this is the obvious wrong statement. This was not required. Right, so there's a simple example of using an assertion into a traffic light, right? For example, here, let us understand. There's a simple example. Let's say we have a function called switch lights and a variable stop light, right? So we are simply going to put these lights into loop, right? As you have seen, the most of the traffic lights, they're into loops, right? When a particular signal is green, the other is red, or when another is green, the other is yellow, right? When a particular is yellow, the third one is red. So likewise, so they are always in a loop, right? Uh, so we are going to set a simple for loop defining a key in the spotlight.keys function, right? So spotlight is a variable and keys associated it will be the value that we want to give here. So if the spotlight is key, if it is equal to green, then we are going to assign a new value, which is we are going to change the new value, or we are going to change the traffic signal from green to yellow, right? If it is yellow, we are going to change it to red, and if it is red, we are going to change it to green, right? So this is a simple loop to switch the lights, right? And here is where we are going to call the switch light uh, function, right? Now exception here is that, let's say when we give this command assert red in spotlight values, neither light is red, right? For example, where that if while writing this switch light, you had added an assertion to check that at least one light has to be red, right? Because in this traffic signal, not all the lights can, or not two lights can be orange or two lights can be green, right? So there has to be at least one of the light which is always red, right? Always red. So in order to check that, we are going to just simply put assert. So assert will simply check whether if it is true. If it is true, then good. If it is not true, then it is definitely has an error. There is definitely an error. That means if at least one of the light is always red is not true, then there is something really wrong with the line of the code, the program that we have written. So this is the best way to assert it. Right, and as you can see, when you execute, you do get an error, but you get an assertion error saying that neither of the light is red. Right? Fine. So there might be few situations, there might be some conditions wherein you want to disable these assertions. Right? You don't want these assertions. So assertions can be disabled by simply passing the parameter that is -0, which is nothing but the -0 is the option which will help which will help the program to understand that we are trying to disable the assertion, right? So why we require this is because uh, when you have finished writing and testing a program, when you have done with the debugging, when you have identified that there are no further errors, right, and there is no further debugging required as a programmer, right? Then, if you think that, then you can simply disable instead of removing those assertions. You can simply disable. Why I mean disable is because in future, let's say if you want to refer those programs again and you want to check again with those assertions, then you can simply remove this hyphen zero or hyphen o, sorry, hyphen zero here, and the placed assertions or the defined assertions will always be there, right? So instead of removing the assertions, you can just simply disable it. So disabling is kind of a creating, or making a particular instruction comment, right? Commenting a particular instruction. So it's simply like that. So if you want to use that particular instruction in the program, you remove that comment symbol from the beginning, and that statement can be executed. So similarly is assertions. You can keep those assertions in the program, but in case you want to disable, you don't want to make use of assertions, you can disable it by using hyphen zero, right? So instead of deleting the assertions, it is better, it is a good practice to disable the assertions. Right, so more about the assertions, you can simply have a look in the appendix B. Right. So with this, we shall conclude the today's lecture. Please make a note of this program that we have seen today. Right. And if you have any doubts, we still have 2 minutes to discuss the doubts. Anybody, any doubt? Yeah, please respond, guys. Anybody, any doubt? Any particular slide which is not understood, we can visit that again. Okay. Then. I hope you are completing the assignments side by side on daily basis, so that you will and don't end up piling up all the data. So if there are no further doubts, then we shall conclude the lecture. Okay. Thank you.